I'm Desiree Rucker, host of Culture Matters TV. I'm here today with Louise Ferraro Derichin, an artist and writer who hails from the Fort Greene projects, as I do. The reason that Louise is here today is because she is an example of a success story from our hometown, which is, everyone knows Brooklyn is an entity in itself, and Fort Greene Projects was and always is a sort of special place, let's put it that way. And the reason that it's important for Louise to bring her story to the fore is because she's written a book called Double Locked Doors, and the manuscript is ready to go. And she's here to not only publicize it, but to encourage youth who live in Fort Greene Projects, which is now known as Walt Whitman and Ingersoll houses, to continue to live their dreams, go for their dreams, work hard and study. So Louise, I'm going to turn it over to you. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you for having me here and for telling a little bit of the background and the reason for my writing the book, which basically is to share with people growing up in the Fort Greene projects.
Okay, so Louise, your family moved to Fort Greene. We could say Fort Greene Projects, Fort Greene houses. In what year?
The year I was born, 1944. That was during World War II. My father was working at the Navy Yard, and the projects were built for those people who needed housing and couldn't afford housing. The people working at the Brooklyn Navy Yard got priority. So my parents moved from a tenement house in which they shared a bathroom with several families, and it was not the cleanest place. My mother, being meticulous, was the one in charge of cleaning the bathroom if she wanted to use it. Really a pretty awful type situation. But the projects were something welcome. They had heat, reliable sources of hot water, clean. It was an opportunity to get into a much better, healthier environment, and they took advantage of that.
Well, you know, Louise, we've been blessed to have photos from your family album be included as part of this recording today. Who are these lovely people?
Oh, that's my mother and father. I believe they were still dating then. They were married on October 1st, 1939. And that was during the Depression. And it was rough times. My mother had a very difficult life growing up. She lost her mother when my mother was 11 years old. And her father packed up 5 children and moved back to Italy, moved to his hometown in Italy and reared his children there. My father had a rough life also. He was 8 years old when the Spanish influenza took his mother and his older sister. And his father just kind of didn't know what to do with the children, so he let them just run wild. My father quit school, 3rd grade. My mother had a 6th grade education, but my father kind of roamed the streets being a bad boy. He has a very gentle nature, which was kind of amazing that he survived living in Brooklyn at the times when there was a lot of crime and where dead bodies were in the street. It was a rough time, but he learned to be rough when he had to be. And he boxed and he was gentle, but if anyone came near his children, they would be sorry, or come near his wife, they'd be sorry. He was ready to go after them. So, but this is a gentle man, very gentle, very quiet.
And they had how many children?
3. When I moved there was just my older sister and me, and then my younger sister was born while we were in the projects.
Did your family always live there, or did they move to another apartment? Or
no, they always lived there, and I was very proud of that building. I loved saying I was from 79 North Oxford Walk, because that was one of the tallest buildings. It was 13 stories high, and it had a water tower on top, which really distinguished it. So for me, it was a very special place to live, and I had a great deal of pride living there.
Okay, so that's the apartment. This is the room where, these are the rooms where it happened, as it says in Hamilton.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. We were on the 7th floor. On the right side, starting at the rightmost window, that was our living room, and that was our playground. That was for my sisters and I. That was Coney Island. That was the park. That was everything. We didn't have a TV for a long time, but we made our own fun. The next window over was our kitchen. And our kitchen had we managed to fit a washing machine into that kitchen so that my mother wouldn't have to wash things by hand.
As well, when you talk about these rooms, I'm picturing, my parents' rooms, the kitchen, where I washed dishes almost every night. We took turns, but somehow my sister always forgot it was her turn. And smart girl, she would fall asleep before it was, time to do the dishes. And so, and just the living room, and just, the joy of remembering the childhood home, just, for most people. And I'm sorry for those who, didn't have that experience of being, in that type of surrounding with love and knowing that you're sheltered and safe. But that's how I feel when I think about, apartment 1D. And for you, it's
Yes.
the same for 7A, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is apartment 7A.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was very important also. It was part of my identity, actually. And no matter what, and there were crimes. It was difficult. The elevator was stinky. There were, and going up to the 7th floor holding your breath was an art. It really was very difficult. And when I took my family back here, we did go into the elevator, and the first thing I did was look for the puddle, and there was no puddle. So I figured, oh, this is great. This is okay. And it wasn't until much time had passed, years, when I was talking about it, and my daughter said, "You didn't smell that stench from the pee?" And I said, I just saw there was no puddle. It was great. But at any rate, that was the elevator. And the bathroom. The bathroom was where my mother hung the clothes. We had a rack strung over the tub, and that's where the clothes were hung to dry. And I never got to go to a baseball game until after I was married. And I will tell you, I enjoyed the baseball games, looking out that window more. Maybe it's because I had the chippy seats when we went to a game. And I just, I never got close enough to enjoy it. But looking out that window, I did.
So this is you as a baby. I have that on screen. I love that picture, because you just look so determined and so smart. You're like, I know what's going on here.
I was a very determined child, a very stubborn child. And that contributed a lot to my becoming what I have become. And maybe in some cases it interfered, but overall it was my stubbornness, my looking at something and say, I want that. And just, that's it. I wanted it. So I found a way to get it. That's all. My dad, he would take us to the park. And let me tell you about the photos.
Okay.
My mother was the photo keeper, and she wrote on every one. And it's so nice to see her handwriting on it. And when she died, she had a cedar chest, which was basically lined with cedar. It was about 4 feet wide and maybe 1.5 feet deep, 2 feet deep, I don't know. It was filled with albums, photo albums that my older sister took. And she has kept those albums. But what she did was she went through every one of them and took one picture from each page for my younger sister and for me, and put together a compressed album from that larger collection, which was so remarkable. And I have that. I have scanned those pictures, and in the copy of my book, Double Locked Doors, that I had made up for my children, I included a full album at the back of the pictures, of all the pictures I had. This is, you've got my Uncle Johnny is holding my younger sister, Joanne. I'm holding on to his shoulders and peeking my head out from behind him. And then my older sister, Asu, who was named after my father's mother, is in the background, and we call her Sue for short. And then my Uncle Tony is on the right. That's, both of these are my mother's brothers. Uncle Tony fought in the Italian army. Uncle Johnny on the left fought in the American army. Uncle Tony did not want to be in the army. And he wrote to his brother, Johnny, "Don't let them get you. They're terrible. They're mean to you, and they make you eat rice, and I hate rice." And he had a hard time. He was really a wreck when he came to us, but he wound up eventually, when the war was collapsing on Italy, he wound up deserting and going back home, which was up in the mountains of Northwest Italy. And he was there, and he had to hide out every time the Germans came. And one time they caught him in the field, and he ran for his life, and the one bullet just went right by his ear. He made it into the woods just in time to get away from them. Well, Johnny lived with us before he went into the war for the United States, and after. Uncle Tony came to us and lived with us in the projects after World War II. He had nightmares. He would be screaming during the night. It was really horrible what he went through. I think he was kind of messed up for the rest of his life after that war.
Can I ask a question? How many bedrooms did you have in the apartment?
We had 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
My older sister had her own until someone moved in with us. Joanne, my younger sister, and I slept in 1 bedroom, which was a large one. And when Sue had to leave her bedroom, we actually had a second bed for her. So we had a double bed for Joanne and me, and a single bed for Sue. And we had enough room for a dresser and enough room to put our feet down.
You had room for family. And this is an important thing too about what's happening now in society, because it seems like family doesn't have room for family. And there used to always be a fold out cot or a couch, or, you can move over and share a bed, but now it's not like that. Folks coming from other places, you have a 1-bedroom apartment, you're like, please, no. No. And then, people down and out because of this this constant economic, downturns. They just can't seem to find a sure footing.
I've got to tell you about that. And I agree with everything you said. And it used to be that if you had a job and you did it well, you'd stay there for 20 years. You'd be, they would be glad to have you, et cetera. You didn't have to worry about them saying, guess what? Someone said we have to turn the bottom line up a little. And that's the way we do it. No. But in these times, people are let go, and we've had a couple of recessions or what have you. We did share our household with family. There was no question about it. My Uncle Johnny and my Uncle Tony, when they got married, they came back with their wives. My Uncle Tony came back with his wives and his children, and we shared. I was very fortunate a few years ago, and this is how it's unfortunate and it's fortunate. It was during the big real estate recession. My younger daughter and her husband and their little infant found themselves jobless and had basically charged everything they could just to feed themselves. So they were in a really bad position before they called and said, she didn't even call me, she called her sister, and she's very close with. My 2 girls are 5 years apart, but extremely close.
That's wonderful.
Called her and said, I don't know what to do. And Jessica said, Mommy and Daddy will take care of you. You don't have to worry. I'll help, etc. So Robin and her husband Carlos and their little boy Caleb came to live with us. And over the course of 5 years, with the exception of 1.5 years, they did live with us. They came, they were optimistic about Texas, where we live, and he got a job right away. But then the recession, the real estate recession hit here, moved from Florida to here. So he was jobless again. By then, Robin was ready to have her second child. She came pregnant with the second child. So we were in a townhouse that my husband and I had bought for us, just for our size. Okay. It did have 3 bedrooms, but one was an office, and it was a combination office and studio for me to paint in. And then the other was, a guest bedroom and ours. Well, we made do. I consider myself so lucky that I got to have my children, and grandchildren live with me. And oh my God, I can't tell you how special that time was, and how much I realized that we're missing that now. Grandparents remain as independent as they can, as long as they can, and they get shuttled off to a place that'll take care of them.
Yes.
But you don't have that intergenerational connection, and it's life. Even as the oldest adult in the family, I had the wonderful experience of having my grandchildren growing in front of me, discovering the world, and I could see things that they were seeing that I no longer saw.
Exactly.
My older daughter and her family lived nearby, so we were twice blessed. We got to see her children grow as well. Now, both families live half a continent away.
Did you girls have a lot of fun playing as kids on this equipment?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. They refer to that area sometimes as the concrete jungle. And there was concrete over the place. And if terror struck you, it was a jungle. We're lucky not to have that. You had so much life and fun playing with the simple things. That behind you, well, this you can, I think you can tell, I'm on the left, the little chubby with the curly hair. Joanne in the middle, and it's my younger sister, and Sue, Asunta, on the side, each 2 years apart. And those steps in the background were a stage. Oh, were they fun just to walk up? I mean, just change elevation. It gave you more space, and it was a lot of fun to play. There were concrete barrels, not at this location, but at one of the other buildings, concrete barrels that I used to love to run through, ducking, of course, and take a long run and jump onto the top of the barrel and straddle it. And every summer I would do that. It would mark the beginning of summer when I didn't have winter clothes on encumbering me. It took a couple of attempts to get on top of that barrel, but I was determined and had that great joy of succeeding.
I had a number of relatives who lived within the vicinity of Fort Greene. So it wasn't as if you were an outlier and didn't have family. Everybody was in Italy. You had an aunt that also lived in Fort Greene. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I remember.
It was my father's sister and her family of 6 children.
Wow. So you had a lot of playmates.
We did. And we were matched pretty much. My aunt's 3 youngest children were the ages of my younger sister, my older sister, and me. So there were 2 boys with the younger ones. And the building on the left is where my aunt lived. And you're seeing the face of the building. And right at the right corner of it, if you went in, because that part of the building was recessed, if you went in, that's where her apartment was. And she was able to see our first apartment. We were in 5E, instead of 7A when we first moved there. 5E faced my aunt's apartment. And she saw me as a 2-year-old walking on the windowsill. And there were no safety guards on that window. And the sill was enough for my feet to be on, but I was 2 years old. And she left her 6 children. Well, they weren't 6, there were 5 at the time. She left them and ran the distance from her building to mine, and got in the elevator, made everybody just said, don't press any buttons. And she just pressed 5 and ran to our apartment, knocked on the door, and told her that I was on the windowsill. My mother knew she couldn't scream, get down, because I probably would have turned around and fell out.
Exactly, exactly. And also some interesting news about your relatives having entrepreneurial aspirations in the neighborhood. I was so happy to see that, there was a candy store, because, the candy store was the spot. So you had an uncle who had a candy store on Park Avenue?
My father's brother had a candy store. And if you look on the left on the window, about 2/3 up, you'll see ERRARO. And that was part of Ferraro. Just the F is chopped off,
Yes.
the family name. And in there, my aunt that rescued me, there were 2 of her children, the tall girl on the right and the boy squatting down. And the other little girl was the daughter of the owner of the candy store.
Amazing.
And the store was across from the projects. And we used to go over there all the time. And I loved going in there.
Plenty of playmates that were, sort of really friendly to you because they were family. One of the experiences I had growing up was having quite a few little fights because kids see you with something they don't have, or they want something you have, or they just are jealous, or whatever reason the kids fight. But there were a lot of fights. I don't know what your experience was like.
When you say fights with kids, was it with brothers and sisters, or are you talking
No,
about?
just like fights in the street. You would have a girl who would be jealous of you, and she and her friends would say something, and then you would say something, and then here we go.
There's some things about my personality that are good. Some things that are shortcomings. I'm not very brave. I take risks for myself. I do all my life. I've done that. I've always said, okay, I can do that. Even if I didn't know a thing about it, and not even consciously do that. I would just say, okay, I got to do it. I felt like I had to. But in terms of fights, I avoided them. I was
a smart girl.
They're stiff. And one thing that comes to mind is 3rd grade. And I wrote about this in my book. Barbara, I remembered her name. Barbara erased my name from a math paper and written in pencil and put her name on. And the teacher called me up and said, okay, Louise, where's your paper? You didn't hand it in. I said, I did. And she said, it's not here. So we looked through them. I said, there's my paper. So it had Barbara's name on it. So I went back to my desk, and Barbara said to me, I'm going to beat you up. Okay, those words, I'm going to beat you up. Oh, God, now he turned pale. And she said, meet me after school at the back door. Oh, yeah. So I went home for lunch, because I always did go home for lunch with my sisters. And I told my mother. And my mother said, you should have said to her, yeah, you and who else?
You and what on, right?
I thought she was going to say, I'll come up to school, walk you home. No, she just said, you should say, you else. Went back to school after lunch, and Barbara said to me, I'm going to be waiting for you. Meet me there after the back door, and I'm going to beat you up. And I said, yeah, you and who else? And she says, I don't need anyone else.
Your mother was
out the front door.
Wolf tickets. That's called selling wolf tickets. You're like, you say you're gonna, like at the boxing matches when they like eye each other and they talk all that crap. That's what your mother told you to do. It works sometimes. It really does. Sometimes you gotta take your licking.
I went out the front door. I did. And the next day she said to me, "Where were you?" I didn't bother to answer.
Those
Okay.
those who fight and run away live to fight another day. That's
Oh, thank you. I managed to get through with no bruises, really, and mostly just I just ducked. I never challenged. It was hard, and it's left an imprint on me, I have to say. But it was part of my character, and it made me strong in one way and maybe weak in others. But I think the balance was that it made me strong.
but you did see a lot of fights in the
Yes.
project.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
we can't,
Yes.
yeah, and after school.
It was very threatening. It was very threatening. In class, I had to hide my grades. I couldn't let anyone see I was getting A's. I just couldn't. And still somehow they call me teacher's pet, which I tried hard not to be teacher's pet. But I was a good, reliable monitor who got her work done quick. It was so horrible. But I had friends, there were at least two others that were brighter than I was. And I was friends with them. And just having that connection, just having that, just even one person that you can communicate with, one person that maybe is not getting the kind of anger you're pulling on, but just someone that was solid that you could be with, helped a lot for me to stay focused and continue to enjoy being what I enjoyed. And I enjoyed studying. That was it. I enjoyed learning, not geography, but everything else. Okay, PS 67. This is the first school I went to. I was here for kindergarten through second grade, and then went to PS 12, because this school was too crowded. 67 was too crowded. So they were going to demolish PS 12, but they opened it up to bring the overflow. So my sisters and I and other kids on that side of the projects went to PS 12.
It was integrated at that time, right? It was.
You asked me that in one of our conversations, and I
Yes.
paused. And the reason I paused was, for me, the word integrated was something that was done deliberately. And nothing was deliberate about our school. The kids that lived in the projects went there. There were Black, white, and among the white, many different groups. There weren't too many Puerto Rican children at that time. There were Puerto Ricans in the project, but not that many. It was predominantly Black and white. And yeah.
What was the ratio, would you say?
We were all mixed.
Would you say like 50-50, 60-40?
No, maybe 60-40 white, Black. I think. I can't swear to it.
Okay, well, we can always go to the census data. Next time on Culture Matters TV, where we continue our conversation with Dr. Louise Ferraro-Derrichon about her life experiences after growing up in Fort Greene projects. It's going to be interesting.